Hello, today we're going to be going over notes 4.1, which talk about horizontal and vertical lines. We are still in our linear unit, or our linear section of Algebra 1. So today we're just going to be focusing specifically on lines that are horizontal and vertical. Our learning target is I can write equations of horizontal and vertical lines, as well as graphing horizontal and vertical lines. I can graph equations of horizontal and vertical lines, as well as define their slopes. So we have two vocab words. The first one is a horizontal line, and that is going to be a line that extends left to right on a graph. Horizontal lines look like the horizon if you are watching the sunrise. Here, I'll show you. Here's a little sun. Here's your sun rising. So we think of horizontal lines like we are watching the sunrise, okay? You can also think about the H of horizontal, like this part of the H is also a horizontal line. And then a vertical line is not horizontal. It is a line that extends up and down on a graph. So a vertical line is going to go up and down on a graph. The best way you can think about this, I think, is the bottom part of this line makes a V for vertical. If you're not my student, this might not make sense to you, but I also tell my kids that Miss Olmsted is vertically challenged because I am only 5'1", so I am quite short. But those are just some ways that you can help remember, vertical and horizontal. I guess I can show you this over here too, like the V of vertical makes a vertical line, okay? There are some acronyms we can use to help us remember parts of horizontal lines and vertical lines, and so we're going to talk specifically about horizontal lines first. We can use the acronym HOI to remember horizontal lines. The H is going to stand for horizontal, obviously. The O is actually our slope, and it is a zero slope. So although this is the letter O, we actually think about that as the letter 0 because our slope is 0. And then with horizontal lines, when you are looking at the equation of a horizontal line, the equation will always be y equals a number. There will never be an x with horizontal line equations. It will always be something like y equals 2, y equals -7. There is no x involved in that. So if you look down here at this section, we have a horizontal line that is graphed. It says fill out the table based on the graph and answer the questions. So I'm first going to grab some coordinates here, and I'm just going to be picking random coordinates. This coordinate is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is -4, 3. This is -2, 3. This is 0, 3. This is 1, 2, 3, 3. And I'm just going to go plug those in over here on my table. You can choose any coordinates you want. Those are the coordinates that I'm going to pick. And then I'll just pick the one next to it, which is 4, 3. The questions that they ask says, which values from the table are consistent? Well, if you look at our y values, notice that those are all the same. So our y values. What axis is the graph passing through? If you look at your graph, it is passing through the y-axis here. What is the slope of the graph? We've talked about slopes of our lines like this before. We do rise over run, so I'm just going to choose 2 points. We are rising 0, and we are running 1, 2, 3, 4. Anytime that you have 0 over a number, your slope is just going to be 0. And it says, what is the equation of the graph? Because this is a horizontal line, we think of this as HOI. And the y is what our equation is going to equal. You can also look at the fact that all of your y's are consistent, and the equation of this graph will be y equals 3. Vertical lines also have an acronym. Their acronym is VUX. V stands for vertical. U stands for an undefined slope. Undefined slope. And then X stands for the equation that you'll see with vertical lines. That's always going to be X equals. So here we have a vertical line that is graphed. It says fill out the table based on the graph and answer the questions. So kind of like I did with the last problem, I'm going to just grab a couple of coordinates. This is -2, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is -2, 3. This is -2, 1. This is -2, 0. And this is -2, 4. So we have -2, 4, -2, 3, -2, 1, -2, 0, and then -2, 4. Which values from the table are consistent? Again, all of our x values are the same, so our x values are the values that are consistent. What axis is the graph passing through? Well, if you look at your graph, it's going to pass through the x-axis. What is the slope of this graph? I'm going to just grab 2 coordinates. My rise is 1, 2, 3. My run is 0. Anytime 0 is on bottom, that's bad. That is going to be an undefined slope. So our equation, because our x's are the same and because this is a vertical line, our graph is going to be x equals, or our equation is going to be x equals -2. And again, I should have mentioned this earlier, but notice that all of the x's are -2, which is why your equation is -2. And then up here, all of our y values were 3, which is why we ended up with y equals 3 there for our equation. All right, graphing horizontal and vertical lines. It says graph the equations given, then determine if they are horizontal or vertical. There's a couple ways that we can think about graphing horizontal and vertical lines, but what I would like for you guys to do is actually look at this and say, is this hoi or is this vux? Well, because this is x, this is going to be a vux graph, which means that I've got a vertical line, which remember means that my line is going to go up and down like that. Now, my line has to go up and down at -5 wherever my x-axis is. So I'm going to go to the x-axis, which is here, and I'm going to find -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is here. And because my line is vertical, it must go this way. Now, because I have already talked about the fact that this was a vertical line, that is going to go here. This is vertical. If I look at the next equation, this is a y. Because this is a y, this has to be a hoi graph. And remember that the h means that I'm going to have a horizontal line. But I have to find where on my y-axis I have the number 3, which happens here. I've got a horizontal line this way, so I can actually put down here that I had a horizontal line. All right, next graph I have is y equals, because that is y, that is another hoi. I'm going to have a horizontal line at y is -1/2. Remember that this is your y-axis, so you have to find -1/2, which is actually here. And I've got a horizontal line, so I'm going to go this way. Whee! That is horizontal. And then lastly, I've got x equals. Because it is x equals, we have a vertical or a vux graph. Vertical means that my line is going to go straight up and down, and I have to find on my x-axis 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 here. It's vertical, it's got to go up and down. So here I have a vertical graph. And those are different ways that you can think about graphing horizontal and vertical lines. Now we're going to come down here and we are going to write equations from a graph. So again, there's a couple ways we can do this. If you look at this line, you have to ask yourself a couple of things. Is this horizontal or vertical? And if you have to come over here to the side and write these down, remember that you can write hoi and you can also write vux. And remember that vux is going to go like this. So when you look at this first graph, because your graph is going from left to right, you actually have a horizontal line. And so the equation is just going to be wherever my graph hits that y value, which for us is a +4. So my equation will be y equals 4, because remember that in hoi equations, whatever letter is at the bottom of hoi or vux, that's going to be where you're going to write your equation from. You can also think about this as your graph crosses the y-axis, so it has to be y equals. Okay, my equation is y equals 4, and then remember that, I'm going to write this down because I think it'll help. So your equation is going to come from this guy. And then remember that your slope comes from the middle. Your slope is going to be 0. Over here, if you look at graph number 2, it actually looks like the purple vux. Okay, it's going from it's going up and down, or top to bottom, whatever you want to think of it as. Because this is a vertical graph, I know that this is vux. I also am looking to see where it crosses my axis, and it looks like it's crossing my axis at 1. So my equation will be x equals 1, because remember that the x is going to be what your equation is coming from, and then the u, remember, is your slope. It's an undefined slope. Undefined. These last two, I'm just going to do them kind of quickly. This is going to be y equals -1 with a slope of 0. And this one is vertical. It's going to be x equals -4, and that slope is undefined. Okay, All right, we have a couple more questions. It says, write equations given various information. So it says, write the equation of the line that passes through the following coordinates. So what we typically do with this is the first thing that we do is find the slope. And then the second thing that we do is write our equation in point slope form. And then we may or may not need to convert. Okay. So we can do a couple of things with these equations. The first thing that I really do think you should do is just find your slope, because I think that that's going to help you know automatically what your equation is going to be. So we, remember, are going to label this x1, y1 and x2, y2, and the slope equation is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is going to be negative 10 minus negative 10 over negative 10 minus 2. When I go to simplify this, this is negative 10 plus 10. This is still negative 10 minus 2. This is actually 0 over 10, 11, 12 over negative 12. And remember, when 0 is on top, that's good. You end up with a slope of 0. The only time you can have a slope of 0 is if you have a horizontal or vertical line. And just as a reminder, 0 is a Hoy graph, or a Hoy equation, okay? If you look at your coordinates, do you actually see that the y value for both of your coordinates is the same? It's negative 10. That means that my equation will be y equals negative 10, okay? So a couple things I need you to think about. Your slope is 0, and remember that your slope being 0 helps you know that you ended up with a Hoy. Because it is a Hoy, the y at the back of Hoy helps you know what your equation is. And the way that I know that my y is negative 10 is because if you look at the two coordinates, both of their y values are negative 10. With that thought process, let's look at this guy. Hopefully you can already see what's going on, but we're gonna do this mathematically just so that we are guaranteeing you knowing why things are the way that they are. This will be 3 minus negative 7 over 0 minus 0. This is 3 plus 7 over 0. This is 10 over 0. 0 on bottom is bad. That gives us our undefined slope. The only time we can have an undefined slope is if we have a Vux graph, okay? Because it is Vux, I know that my equation, remember undefined is this, so my equation has to be x equals. And then if you look at the x value in both of your coordinates, they're both 0. So it's just going to be x equals 0. All right, number 3 says, write the equation of a horizontal line that passes through the point 4, negative 2. Because it is a horizontal line, we are going to write Hoy. Hoys mean that my equation has to be y equals. So when you look at your coordinate, you want the y value. This is your x value. This is your y value. So our equation will be y equals negative 2. I got that because the y value was negative 2. And then the last one says, write the equation of a vertical line that is going to be Vux. Remember, Vux means that your equation will be x equals. Here's your x, here's your y. My x was not negative, my x was 9. So I'm going to make my equation be x equals 9. And there you go, my friends. That is how you write equations and graph horizontal and vertical lines. Please try to use Hoy and Vux when you can. It's really going to help you remember the differences between like the slopes and the equations and all of that. And then use any of the tools that I taught you, like writing the H as your horizontal and then writing your V as the up and down arrows on a vertical line, just to kind of help you figure out how things work out. But that's all I have for you. If you have any other questions, please go see your teacher during their normal tutorial times, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.